2020 was a bit of a weird year, for all of us I believe. Whether it affected my mentality more than I realized, affected the development of the games that I played, or had no effect at all, for at least the first 3 quarters of the year, I felt things were going kind of slow. It wasn't until late September, October-ish that I felt things were really ramping up. At that point, the bangers just started dropping left, right, and center, and I couldn't keep up. Hence why this video is releasing 2 months into 2021. With the exception of Ghost of Tsushima, I've cleared the games that I most wanted to before making this list. And while I wanted to play Tsushima, 3 games kind of just dropped on me at once, so it sadly needs to be backlogged for now. For those of you who are new around here, I tend to play a bit of everything, but I definitely favor odd Japanese games, and that's likely going to show on this list, so set your expectations accordingly. My criteria for these videos is pretty simple: no straight remakes, remasters, ports, or expansions. So with that, here's my 10 favorite games of 2020. Number 10.
Let me know in the comments if there's any other games that you thought deserved to be in the top 10 worst that I luckily had the opportunity to not play. There were a few honorable mentions, like, I don't know, Disaster Report 4.
Disaster Report 4. Disaster Report 4.
This is a game that's likely to end up on more worst games of the year lists, and for good reason. It's not optimized well, it's ugly, it's downright senseless at times, it's tonally inconsistent, and borderline unfinished. In other words, it's a disaster report game. While it's a little heavier on the reporting parts and a little lighter on the disaster part than I was hoping for, this game gave me an experience I find is very rare in games today. It charmed me with its budget and awed me with its lunacy. There really is no telling what comes next in this game, and having a mechanic that allows you to scream in people's faces that, as far as I can tell, has no actual gameplay purpose. It's just the kind of shit I love about overly ambitious micro-budget games that never, not in a million years, would have been able to see their ideas through to completion. Gameplay-wise, you really just navigate the aftermath of a giant earthquake. You explore all manner of ridiculous socio-political, economic, and geological shit that can come as a result. And it's just wild. Number 9. Manifold Garden. This game was a small stroke of genius from developer William Cheer and his team. Using some clever tricks in coding, what could have been a generic elemental block transporting puzzle game instead became a gravity-defying, mind-bending trek through non-Euclidean spaces and MC Escher-inspired locations complete with impossible geometry. There's no real narrative to speak of, and the tools to complete your job are rather limited, but the unique nature of the environmental mechanics keeps you in constant shock of the realization that the box you should be thinking outside of actually just doesn't exist. And I mean that literally. Manifold Garden is a brilliant game and a breath of fresh air for the genre. Rather short at around 5 hours or so, 3.5 if you really know what you're doing, but if you have any interest in the genre at all, give it a check. It's easily worth the time, cost, and experience. Number 8. Final Fantasy VII Remake. As I said in my review before, I don't consider this a remake really, more of an alternate timeline sort of thing. A lot of story beats are the same, but a lot are significantly different, some of which could only work in an alternate universe or with massive retcons. So long as they can stay away from the Kingdom Hearts pit of convolution, I don't mind these changes too much. The new action-based combat has some room for improvement, but what we have is a lot of fun, and the mechanics can run pretty deep for anybody looking to min-max their party. This is also easily one of the best looking and sounding JRPGs ever made. But then, Square is one of the only studios who even have this kind of money to dump into a genre title. What ultimately made me put Final Fantasy VII Remaster Part 1 on this list, however, is that it done what I wanted it to do the most. It made me care about the characters I meant to love and lose along the way, something I find the original just didn't do very well. Though the closing chapter left the game in a delicate and perilous situation, I am indeed looking forward to the future installments and seeing how they overcome everything they've established so far and how they raise the stakes even more. Number 7. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Wow. hell's really frozen over by now. Not only is this an EA game, but it didn't even release in 2020. Maybe a bit of a cheat including this, but it released mid-November 2019, and that was just too late for me to get around to playing it in time for last year's list. So I'm going to give it some leeway. As a Star Wars fan, I haven't been a fan of the games in quite some time. EA Star Wars games are to fans what sand is to Anakin Skywalker in the prequel trilogy. A reminder of the years we spent as slaves while the crude, insectoid, money-hungry alien in charge flapped its wings and told us the junk they were trying to sell us was actually gold. Credits will do fine, assholes. We don't need our games loaded with microtransactions. However, this is doing it right. The combat, checkpoints, and death penalties of a Dark Souls game, the platforming and puzzle mechanics of an Uncharted or Tomb Raider game, and the lore, aesthetics, and powers of the Star Wars universe. I am completely on board with this. The story and characters are fun and mostly memorable, and the OST nails the Star Wars feeling better than the new movies do. As much as I enjoyed this though, I'm not putting it as high as I would like, as the performance was absolute dog shit. And not in a charming Disaster Report 4 kind of way either. I had cutscenes run like slideshows and combat pause to load. It was bad.
This is Saul. How you doing?
What do you want with Toph?
Jedi business.
Jedi are dead.
Not all of them.
You get that off a corpse?
I will be looking forward to a second playthrough, however, when I finally get a PlayStation 5. As a Star Wars fan, this is the game I've been waiting for years.
You and me.
Number 6. Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. 1 part Sakuna, 1 part Ruin, 10 parts rice farming mechanics. This game was a weird blend of genres and ideas that I've never seen quite taken to this level before. Muramasa style combat, Little Dragon's Cafe styled central hub and charming character interactions, and real life styled rice farming mechanics. But it's easy to see how this game won't be for everybody. The rice farming in particular requires so much from the player, some might find it laborious and exhausting. But if it clicks with you and you see the game through, you start to see how geniusly your labor ties directly into the themes of the game. It's a lesson shown more than it's told, and it's understood through your actions more than anything else. Sakuna is a game for those who want a warm and wholesome experience, and for those who want to nurture and grow crops, as well as relationships with a colorful cast of characters. It's also a game for those who want a power trip as a badass, sarcastic goddess who can slay demons like nobody's business and swing around stages Spider-Man style. It's also about ducks. Definitely the ducks. Ducks! Number 5. Paper Mario and the Origami King. It's no secret that this entry lags behind in a few ways, namely the lack of decent party combat mechanics or a fleshed out progression system. But what it lacks there more than makes up for in its variety of exploration mechanics, different zones, and absolutely stellar wit and comedy. Though the combat had a few missteps that undercut just how awesome it could have been, it really shines in the boss battles, and it provides some of the most strategically interesting and rewarding turn-based fights all year. I know this is a rather divisive game, and I think because of that, it's going to have a harder time than it should finding its audience. But it really did the trick for me. Shockingly, this game had one of the best OSTs of the year as well, and its characters and writing had me smiling from start to finish. That alone makes it worthy of its position here today. It's easy to pick on some of the flaws, but damn it if the game just didn't keep me happy. Number 4. Yakuza Like a Dragon. I had a hard time not putting this one higher, but Yakuza Like a Dragon is my number 4. Yakuza Like a Dragon rings in a new era for the series with a change in location, protagonists, and combat, while retaining the same familiar storytelling and writing we've come to know and love. Ichiban is an incredible new main character, and the combat is a massive achievement for the team's first effort. As a turn-based RPG, it borrows elements from all over the place, namely Dragon Quest, but Persona and Final Fantasy Fantasy's influence are very apparent in the social mechanics and job class systems as well. Story-wise, it's a well-rounded and emotional journey dealing with some very heavy adult subject matter. Also, a very rare instance of a JRPG not only set in the real world, but also focused on a cast of 40 to 50-year-olds, rather than the typical crew of teenagers the genre usually employs. Like most Yakuza titles before it, you can expect to laugh and cry and get gobsmacked by some of the story developments along the way. This comes at a very high recommendation and is easily one of 2020's must-play titles. Number 3. Trails of Cold Steel 4, the final installment in what I previously proclaimed as this generation's greatest JRPG saga. But it's here at number 3, and yeah, that's a shock to me too. It was just last year I was certain that anytime a new Kiseki game released, I would account it as the year's #1 game. Being as dedicated and deep into this franchise as I am, I fully expected it would have that effect. Thing is, for as much as I love the combat, the lore and world building, and the massive cast of characters, I'm not blinded by them. There was a couple pacing issues and story developments that somewhat soured the experience, and I just can't completely look past it. In the face of my #1 and 2 games this year, I just couldn't bring myself to set this one any higher. But don't let that deter you. If you are a fan of Trails of Cold Steel already, you more than likely will not be let down by this experience. And even if you feel the sour moments the same way I did, it is still a massively cathartic experience seeing this grand arc come to a close. At least, come to a soft close. We still have Hajimari no Kiseki to look forward to, which I very much am. I'd love to talk more about this one, but being the 4th entry in the current arc and the 9th entry in the ongoing continuity, it's a bit of an odd place to start giving any details to the potentially uninitiated. For those not in the know, this isn't really a good place to start the series. But if you're somebody who likes massive JRPGs with incredible characters and world building, and some super fun and deep turn-based combat that rewards you for speccing your characters with sense, then this is a series you should start looking into yesterday. You have a lot to catch up on before the next game releases. Number 2. Doom Eternal. Probably another shock coming from me. A first-person shooter in 2nd place. Even as a fan of Doom 2016, nothing quite prepared me for this. Doom Eternal completely raised the bar on first-person shooters and provided constant exhilaration and action that far surpassed anything in the genre to date. Doom Eternal requires players to get up close and personal with the Hellspawn, and rewards aggression through its unique aggression-based stat replenishment system. If you're not going wrist deep in a demon's torso every couple seconds to recharge some stat, then they're going elbow deep into yours. Stat management is incredibly important here, more so than I've seen in the genre before. But be warned, strategizing in this chaos is like trying to thread a needle using only your feet while riding a small boat over stormy waters in the dark. As this pushes players to their conceivable limits, so too does it push the PlayStation 4. If they intend on upping the ante for the next Doom game, if that's even possible, then it's a damn good thing that the next console generation will be well underway by then. Though I was hard-pressed to care about the story, this was hands down the best gameplay experience I had all year. And anybody with even a remote interest in first-person shooters should give this next evolution of shooting action a try. Number 1. 13 Sentinels. If Doom Eternal elevated a genre, 13 Sentinels innovated on genre staples so much that it damn near created one of its own. New genre or not, however, it certainly created an experience unlike anything that came before it, or anything that will ever come after it. 13 Sentinels is a sprawling narrative experience that chronicles 13 intersecting character stories across multiple time periods and branching timelines with numerous high-concept sci-fi devices. The narrative pathways are set up so the overarching story remains very abstract at first, but the more you play, the more you piece it together, and the more the game delivers on mind-blowing revelations. This is all accomplished in a way that only video games as a medium can pull off. The combat is a unique blend of RTS visuals and ATB gameplay that delivers on some extremely satisfying mob-managing mayhem, and the art is absolutely among the best to grace this industry. I don't think 13 Sentinels is just one of the best games of 2020. For me, it's going to go down as one of the games that defined this generation of console gaming. And it's a game that truly deserved more attention than it got. I can't do it justice in a top 10 video like this, there's simply too much to say, and too much that I can't say. I don't want to spoil what this game has in store for you. So if you'd like to see more on this one, be sure to check out my review and find out if this crazy experiment in narration and gameplay will work for you. And if it doesn't, buy it for a friend and support Vanillaware anyway. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are my top 10 games of the year. I feel this list maybe looks a bit more eccentric than last year's did, but like, my interests are kind of all over the place too, so... Sometimes it's the really polished game that seals the deal with some really slick gameplay, and other times it's the really jank one. The one that just makes me smile or keeps me so morbidly intrigued that I can't deny how much I ended up enjoying myself. But before we close out, I just want to caution you not to think too hard about where these games landed in my ranks. I mean, I didn't exactly think too hard or too deep about it myself. Thing is, my opinions towards things aren't exactly concrete. They're more like ketchup or clay or something. Definitely more like clay than ketchup. While I set the games where I want them today, tomorrow, with the exception of a couple slots anyway, I might feel like they should be shuffled around a little bit. For me, these are really just the games that I felt were worth my time or money the most. The games that I got the most out of, or I'm going to remember the most. If you see something here that piqued your interest, go look deeper into it and see if it's worth it for you too. And with that, that's gonna be all for today. If you guys like the video, you know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, and share the video if you can. Links to all of my socials and my Patreon support page are in the description below. And as always, folks, thanks for watching. I guess in keeping with the idea of Disaster Report being kind of jank, I feel like this video kind of turned out a little bit jank too. Thing is, it's been a long time since I made any sort of top 10 list like this, and however I used to write them before, it's just not exactly coming back to me, so hopefully this turned out better than I thought it did. Anyway, thank you all for watching.